Russell, this is very exciting. Welcome back to the show. We're back. This is a second time you've been on the show, but the first time with video, right?
Right. This is great.
This is cool. And I got to say, you've got really great video, too. That's a great webcam you've got. We've done a sound check. We've just done a video check. This is cool. We're going to now talk about Bigfoot again, something that, as you know, I'm very interested in. You're getting ready right now to take off on the road to go on another expedition. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got some personal stuff that I want to take care of. I've got a couple places that I go back and forth to periodically and do my own research. So yeah.
Okay, but we don't know yet whether or not Expedition Bigfoot is coming back. But how many seasons have you done of Expedition Bigfoot?
We've only done the one season. We did the kickoff season, and we were talking about a second season. We were really hopeful, the whole team, the cast. The problem was this COVID thing caught everybody off guard and kind of has set everything on hold. So it seems like everybody's life is on hold right now. But for me to be able to get out in the woods, it's a great way to kind of social distance myself from everyone else and kind of get away from everybody. That's what I do for my own sanity right now.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's just, I want to cover a little bit of ground we talked about in the audio podcast the last time you called for our YouTube audience and our new viewers who haven't seen our conversation before. A little bit of backstory. How did you get into becoming a Bigfoot researcher, a Sasquatch researcher, and getting your show Expedition Bigfoot on the Travel Channel?
Actually, it's for clarification, it's not my show. It's actually Travel Channel came up with the concept, the entire idea.
Yeah.
And I was one of the people that had auditioned for it, and I lucked out and actually got to be part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah.
Always been interested. I think what caught me, just like everyone else, was that Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967. It was intriguing, exciting, spooky. It was real scary because you think, I spent a lot of time in the woods. If there's something like that out there, am I in a safe space or not? It was exciting. So At that point, I decided I was just going to look for it, try to find what I could, and embrace it.
So, okay, what part of the country are you in right now? Where do you live?
Right now, I'm in Washington State.
Okay.
I got a lot of places out here that I do research in Washington State, Idaho, down in Oregon, close to Grants Pass. There's some really great places down there. But my favorite stomping grounds would be Montana.
Okay, but you live in Washington State, which is Bigfoot country, and your full-time job is not looking for Bigfoot. You actually work in a nuclear power station. Is that correct?
I worked on a nuclear reservation back in 50 plus years ago when they put together the Manhattan Project. They were actually making military-grade weaponized fuel. And right now we're disassembling and dismantling all of those facilities and buildings and putting them in a safe configuration to where they no longer pose a threat to just civilians and society. So it's kind of a big job decommissioning some of these large buildings that had such volatile material in them.
And so that's what you do full-time as your full-time gig. And what do your coworkers who are disassembling the nuclear facility with you think when you say you're going off to look for Bigfoot?
I think a lot of it is envious. They would love to come with me. There's a few that have actually said, hey, next time you go out, you got to take me with you. I use all the latest and greatest toys. Night vision goggles, thermal imaging, telescopes. I do a lot of audio and video recording when I'm out there. So a lot of them get caught up in that excitement because it seems like everybody has, heard Grandpa tell a story about something he saw or heard in the woods. So it's been it's been embraced pretty well. Not too much ribbing.
So to be clear, Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, to be clear, right, just to not bury the lead here, is a walking upright, giant ape-like creature that is, in mythology or rumored to live in the North American wilderness. Is this the way you would describe the Bigfoot to people who have not heard of it?
I would describe it like that. It's a bipedal, large. Some people refer to it as the hairy man, or you've had people. It's been in history forever.
Yeah.
No, and it's not just the Northwest. It's different countries, the Himalayas, the Russia. It seems to be everywhere, from coast to coast here in the U.S. as well. I get testimonies from back east, Maine, uh, Ohio, Virginia. It just seems to be that there are sightings everywhere. So I can't really pinpoint it and say it's just the Northwest, but I'd love to go to Canada. Hint, hint.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Canada has got a lot of empty space up there in British Columbia. I actually have a friend who, I
Yep.
won't name him, but I have a friend, a good friend, who has seen an actual Bigfoot outside of Whistler. He saw it running into the woods. He was with someone. They both saw it. They swear they saw it, and they believe in this thing. And they went to a local a native reservation and spoke with some of the local natives there, who said, "Oh, where was it?" They said, "Oh, it was here on the road here between this place and this." They said, "Oh yeah, that's a common migratory route," they said, where they are always have throughout history. We've known that's where the Sasquatch is. Does that sound interesting to you as a place to go explore?
Absolutely. If you have a history, or like you're talking about, a thoroughway or a migration path, that's definitely a place I would like to go do some research.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's of course the native folklore about this this creature is goes back way back, as you mentioned, and up in British Columbia in Canada. My friend was saying a lot of the totem poles have depictions of Sasquatch on it, and so it's
Right.
a very real thing there. And maybe we could go up there together sometime and go look for this. So just to be clear, like, you believe in Bigfoot?
I believe in the possibility, and unlike your friend, I've never had a Class A sighting. I've never really seen anything up front, close and personal. I've seen evidence, tracks, structures. There's been a lot of things that I've seen, and I've heard testimonies from people that I truly do believe. So I believe in the possibility, but I'm a hard sell as well. I actually have to see it for myself, and that's why I do the research that I do.
Wow. Would you be interested in talking to my friend? He's a very close friend, and I talked to him recently. Actually, after we last talked, he listened to our episode and he said, "Hey, I got to tell you something. He never told me before." And I could just tell by he's not a guy that's sort of known for bullshitting me, right? I could
Right.
tell he wasn't messing around. He was completely 100% saw it. His friend saw it, who was also an outdoors person and outdoorsman, and they knew what they saw was what you would describe as a Sasquatch. And they were driving down the road. He saw it run in to the woods. He didn't say anything for a few minutes because he couldn't believe what he saw. And after about a minute, he said, "Did you see that?" And his friend said, "You saw that too?" Oh my! And it was a complete moment that they had. And then they both just couldn't believe what they'd seen. So listen, I'm very much kind of like, I feel about it very much the way you describe it. Like, I've never seen the Bigfoot, right? I've never seen a Sasquatch, but I kind of believe that it's possible because I just see, how vast the wilderness is.
Right.
There's so much that is undiscovered. I think a lot of people that live in cities in America or in crowded parts of the country where there's not a lot of empty space, might think, "Oh, how's that possible? That there'd be an animal that big or a creature that big today." But when you live in Canada or in parts of the country that have vast wilderness, once you walk 200 yards off the road, it's sometimes it's 1,000 miles before you see anything, right? So there's a lot of space back there.
Yeah, it's dense and thick territory too. I think I sent you a picture of one of my last places I researched in Washington.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
Let's have a
I'm
look.
actually in the photo.
Here's a photo right here. I have some photos we could sort of pop through here. Well, let me see. I got to figure out how to. Let me figure out how to work this thing. I've not used this before properly, but let me see. Okay, here we go. Let me go. Pause. Okay, there we go. Where is this? This is one of the photos he sent me. Very beautiful.
That's in northwestern Washington. It's just a location that I think I sent a few of them of that area.
Yeah.
It's real thick. One of the pictures that I sent, I'm actually in the photograph, And I did not send you the picture where I was standing in it. You could see me.
Oh,
I
okay.
took one step to my left, and the tree beside me completely took me out of the photograph. So there was no way to tell that I was even there.
Oh, okay,
And
cool.
that's
Well, I'm
all it
not sure if I
takes
can.
for
I'm not sure if I
somebody.
can go through these in the order that we want to, but maybe let's just talk about the clips that we have here as I go through.
Sure.
What is this we're looking at here? This is a clip. I just threw them
If
all
you,
into the computer, so this is a computer.
right. If you look in the background and you can see the guy standing there behind that frame of
Yeah. This is out.
lens. And
We're up here, and this is up in Washington State. You said, or where is this?
yeah, this is up high. We're close to Marble Mount.
Okay.
And
Wow.
it's just some rugged terrain. It's just beautiful. And it was a very, very old logging industry out through there.
Yeah.
But it's thick. It's just incredibly thick and dense and plush. And it would take nothing for me to literally, like you said, go 100 yards off the road. You'd never see me again.
This is your Bigfoot research vehicle here.
That's my chaser right there. Yeah. It's I am so mean to that truck. I take it places I really shouldn't. That's meant for a small car, but that was just one of the areas that we got up into. Right here, how far away would I have to go to disappear into those trees?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
That's what I was saying.
pretty tight.
It's sort of, and then it goes for miles and miles and miles and thousands of miles, and you can't even pass through there. Really, it's so thick. So I personally believe that it's possible that there could be something like that living out there. Why not? Right? Why not? You know?
Right.
Got to.
I did not put my phone on silent.
That's okay.
I
No problem.
apologize for that.
It's okay. It's Webovision. You can.
Oh my.
It's all right. I can edit that out, but I probably won't because it's kind of fun to leave it in. So, okay, I want to kind of like unpack this in a way that, the average person who has probably not thought about this before is watching going, what are these guys talking about? I mean, is there Bigfoot? I thought that was kind of like the Loch Ness Monster or UFOs or are these guys serious? But we are serious, right? We're seriously
Absolutely.
talking about this right now. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you getting ready to show the thermal clip? Is that what we want to talk about a little bit, or?
We can talk about that. Yeah. So, but before we do that, I just kind of wanted to get a little bit more of sort of your. What would you say to somebody that's looking at us right now talking about this skeptically and saying, "What are these guys talking about? This is not real, right?"
It's gravity exists, but you can't see it. And I believe in the possibility of something that has been able to stay in the forest quite some time without coming into contact with us. It would be very, very easy for me to go into the forest and you'd never see me again either. And I've learned to live with the comforts of man with the roof over my head, the heating and the AC and everything else. But if I've never, and it would take me a while to acclimate to that, but I know that I could get by. For something that has always lived in the forest, you look at grizzly bear, black bear, cougar, mountain lion, whatever's out there, they've learned to adapt to their climate. They don't need us. And they've done a really, really good job of staying hidden. I've yet to find in my research time, I've never found a mountain lion skeleton. I've never found a grizzly bear skeleton. Same way I've never found a Bigfoot skeleton. If Bigfoot exists, it doesn't need us. It's done a really good job of staying out of our path. And if it cycles and dies, we have never found a body, and that's logical. And that's what I appreciate so much about doing my research too. I base everything that I do on logic. I don't think that every sound I hear in the forest is Bigfoot knocking on a tree, or every shadow is Bigfoot. It's when I finally have come to the conclusion that this thing is absolute and real, what I come and show you at that time is going to be uncontested. It'll be that obvious. So my research is about being able to prove the existence of a Bigfoot, which would be, I'd love to be that guy to come forward and say, okay, here it is. There's no more question. This is everything, the end all of the conversation. This is clearly Bigfoot in this forest.
Do you feel that there is a chance that in the next few years that we might finally get a clear photo of this thing or video because of so many people with cell phones now and the ability to capture such great video? Everybody's got a camera in their pocket now.
I think our chances are much greater. I sent you a photograph of some of the equipment that I carry in my truck when I do my research. I take the best possible equipment I can. If you're going to go out fishing for Moby Dick, you don't take a kid's fishing pole. You take the best equipment possible. And that's the same way I feel about doing my research. Take the best possible equipment because that's what it's going to take.
But are you surprised though that there hasn't been just a photo or a video of because there's the famous film from California that was shot in the 60s, was it? What was that film, and was that a real? Do you believe that was an actual Sasquatch?
That was filmed in 1967 in Bluff Creek, California, by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. Roger Patterson held the camera and was trying to get the steady version of what he was seeing across that creek bed. Back in 1967, and you've been in the film industry enough to know that back in 1967, they didn't have spandex back then. They didn't have cloth that would move with the body. So that, whatever it was that walked across that river bottom, didn't show creases in any kind of a costume. It did not look down to see where it was placing its feet, where we would have to do still today in a big costume to see through the eye holes.
Yeah.
So whatever it was that crossed that creek bed has got me absolutely convinced that I need more proof.
Yeah. But that is a very famous piece of footage that everybody's seen. I mean, probably everybody who spent any time looking for cool things to look at on the internet. You know, if
Right.
there's such a big thing on the internet now is looking at, all sorts of UFO videos. I like to go down the rabbit hole of looking at UFO videos and alien abduction videos and all these things that make you think, what if? What if there is something that we don't know about, that we don't understand? Do you think that the absence of any new video of that, though, is maybe something that works against the theory of this thing being real, or or are you hopeful that we're going to see a new video soon? Would you be surprised if we woke up tomorrow and finally there it is, a new video?
I wouldn't be surprised, actually, with as many researchers are out there and the equipment that we have available, especially now with our trending technology. We're really growing by leaps and bounds. So it would not surprise me. I know that as human population grows, we are encroaching more and more onto the wilderness. And a lot more people are actually getting out into the woods too.
I saw a video on Facebook this week in a swamp in Florida, and it was. Have you seen this one? It was a Bigfoot in trying to catch a snake in the marsh, and these people were in a canoe, and they shot it from the canoe, and it was a Bigfoot, and it didn't look fake to me. Have you seen that particular clip?
I've not seen it. I saw one cycle around about a year or so ago where it was digging through a base of a rotten tree.
Yeah.
And it was submerged in the water, digging through that. And that looked pretty good to me. But even at that, there's too many people, which makes it kind of sad, but there's too many people that actually will do a video and put somebody in a costume and try to get that notoriety, and it's hurting it for the people that actually do legitimate research.
Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, I actually did one of those once, to be honest with you. I dressed up, probably about 20 years ago, I dressed up as a Bigfoot up outside of Seattle, and stood at the side of the road, and then when the car came around the corner, we were in the middle of the woods, when the car came around the corner, I ran off into the woods and hid behind a log, and then the car pulled over, and we had hidden cameras. And I think about it now, and I go, I'm kind of lucky I didn't get shot, Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so,
You're one of those guys, Tom.
Yeah, one of those guys that, is lucky he didn't get shot, because I'm assuming that if most people in Washington State saw Bigfoot run into the woods, they probably would want to catch it for themselves, wouldn't they? Oh, sorry,
man.
it's just a MTV talk show host in a costume. So, speaking of all this great footage, though, you have some thermal technology. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll cut to it while you explain what this is.
Okay, season 1, Expedition Bigfoot. We spent a lot of time out in the just kind of doing research, and I actually have a pair of thermal imaging glasses that actually are state of the art, really decent piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And I had been searching this opening for several hours. I was just going back and forth because we had heard sounds. There had been some really, really odd activity in that area. So I had been scanning back and forth, left to right, right to left, and just doing it slow, hoping to catch something on the thermal. And we'd been there day after day. And one of these evenings, as I scanned from left to right, I saw something moving, and it was several hundred yards away from me. I saw something moving, and what I could see in my thermal imaging, it was just put out a really bright heat trace. So I thought, wow, look at that. And my first instinct was it was some body,
Yeah.
walking.
A human being, because when you look at it, we're looking at it now. When we look at it, it looks like sort of like a blob. But if you know what you're looking at, you can tell it's standing upright, I guess. Is that correct?
Right.
Or
Upright, bipedal. You can actually see the movement of the legs as it's walking towards you or away from you. I couldn't really tell, but
so where was this? Where was this thing located? Is this deep in the brush? This heat signature that we're looking at?
No, it was on the tree line on the other side of a big span of an opening of kind of a swampy flatland. It just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So
it gets weirder though.
Okay. What? Uh-oh. What happened?
As you watch, it takes a couple steps, but then it just disappears again.
And
that was where I struggled with that piece of thermal, because later on, as you'll see in that 7-minute piece, there's deer that are actually in that same clearing, not far to the left of it. Because I kept trying to find it again. I just stayed on that opening, trying to hope to see it again.
Right.
Because it did register logically where that thing could have gone, because there was no hillsides or anything like that for it to hide behind.
What would you do if you saw one and it was, what would you do if you were in the woods and you saw one, it's 100 yards away, let's say you've got your camera on it, and then it starts to kind of maybe disappear into would you chase it? Would you
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I would get every bit of video and audio footage I could. I would keep it in my viewfinder as long as I possibly could.
So you would run towards it. You would run towards it. Really, absolutely. No, with no fear of this thing attacking you.
No. Does that make me the dumbest guy on the planet or the smartest guy? I don't know.
Well, I mean, you want it, if you're making this your life's sort of work to find and prove this thing, and then you see it, I could see how you would probably want to take that risk for sure, right?
Yeah. And not only that, but I think the second thing would be to try to find secondary evidence too. If I had lost to where I was unable to keep it, visually, I would actually circle back and do nothing but try to find footprints and get some casts to sustain what I had just seen, kind of backup evidence and material.
So when we talk about casts, this is something you see a lot. People take plaster and they pour it into the footprint of the Bigfoot, and that's
Right.
You actually have these plaster casts that we've seen of these giant footprints that look like giant human feet, basically. How many toes does a Bigfoot have?
It's got 5, just like you and I. If you give me 1 second,
Yeah.
I'll bring one onto the screen for you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I want to see that, yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. We've got Russell Acord here from Expedition Bigfoot, who is on the Travel Channel, regular researcher on Expedition Bigfoot. And you have some images, some pictures of this, or do you actually have a cast with you? What do you have here?
I got a cast, I'll show you. I'm going to give you a quick story behind this. This was actually cast out of the mold. There was a mold made in Bluff Creek in 1967.
Yeah.
And Bob Gimlin has that mold. So he actually can make a cast from what he saw in 1967. So he actually wrote this on here.
Okay.
You should
Let's
be
see.
able to read
Pull
that.
it back a little bit. Pull it. There you go. Patty, Bluff Creek, California, October 1967. Is Patty the name that he's given to the creature?
Yes.
Okay. And
That's the.
can we see that? Can we see the front of it? Can you turn it around? Can we see the front of it? Yeah. There we go. So yeah, it looks just like a large human foot, really, doesn't it? That's a very clear print. Was it in some wet mud or something like that, or?
It was on the sandbar.
Okay.
There was some sand where they had actually took an imprint or cast the print there at Bluff Creek, and just kind of, it's got really good detail through here.
Yeah. Wow.
But even in the sand, there was, as it pushed off from the front of the foot, it left a little crease in the sand right here, where you know how the sand will break.
Yep.
As you step through, the whole piece of sand will stay in one piece and push back. So yeah, this was a great piece that I got from Bob himself. So that was kind of cool.
Wow. Now, I'm sure you must have talked to people who actually claim to have seen one of these Bigfoot, because many people have claimed to actually have encountered them. Have you spoken to people that have seen them, and do you feel a little envious or jealous that maybe that they got to see it and you haven't?
I love hearing the stories. Yeah. Realistically, you get to hear the background of the story or why they were there. Oftentimes, people that see a Bigfoot sighting weren't there to find Bigfoot in the first place. They were camping with their family, or they were deer hunting, or whatever happens to be, or out four-wheeling. These stories are great. Sometimes, and I hate to say this, but sometimes you'll hear a story and you know that it's just a story.
Yeah.
And you have to be non-judgmental, and you have to be polite about it, and you just listen to their story and just acknowledge and take the information. There are people, though, that will give you that will put a story out there that you know that you can trust this man or woman. And you know by the way they react to it. Sometimes people actually are highly affected by it, and it terrifies them, because it shakes their faith in their, whatever religion they have. It shakes their faith to think that there's something higher in the food chain that is a threat to them, that can think critically like humans do.
And
so
it's interesting, because I've watched a lot of interviews. I've actually interviewed a few people over the years. Many years ago, I spoke to somebody who had seen a Sasquatch, and it seems that sometimes it's sort of almost a life-changing experience for them, because now they've seen something that nobody believes to be real, that they fully believe is real and know is real. And now whenever they tell the story, people look at them skeptically, and it's very frustrating for them, because they're looked at like they're making this story up, which they aren't, that they actually... Have you experienced people that are going through trouble because of having seen one of these things?
I have. You hear a lot of people that are, a lot of times they don't want to talk about it because they fear the ridicule.
Yeah.
They think that somebody's going to make fun of them for telling a story about something that they saw. And most people will keep that stuff to themselves until they get in a crowd of people that are like-minded. And then they can kind of open up about it and discuss it. I've heard some really neat stories from people I would never have anticipated.
Yeah. Here you are. What are you doing here in this photo? Oh, sorry.
I'm glad you showed that one.
I got to figure out how to bring that back. It's on autoplay. Let me go and bring that back. Okay, there we go. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right. Yeah. Let me see if I can. There we go. I know how to do this. Okay. Yeah. What are we looking at here? Where are you, and what is that you're doing?
That's a Tahitian singing bowl.
Okay.
And I'm doing the around the top of it to make that sound that comes out of that Tahitian singing bowl. And the idea behind that was to produce a sound that is not natural for the forest.
Okay.
So campers go up and they make their noises. They have vocals. I mean, we all have there's a consistent noise that comes with being out camping.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody will go in with a violin or a drum set or a musical instrument or a guitar, that sort of thing. And I wanted something that was just so off the scale as far as sound goes.
Is the idea to try to get the animal's curiosity so that it comes
Absolutely.
out to really?
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
is there any evidence or reason to believe that would work? I mean, why would you'd think maybe the opposite would be true too? Is it would hear that, know you were there, and run in the opposite direction?
It's not native to what humans sound like.
Yeah.
So it would hopefully get curiosity going. It would make something, curious as to what's making the noise. Is it something that we haven't come across before?
Ah, I see.
In fact,
Sort of like calling a moose or calling, calling. There's different animal calls that do attract animals, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
We had good success with that, believe it or not. That night when we actually had that thing, I actually deployed the singing bowl later on that evening. And in the darkness, I actually had Adam Davis with me on that excursion. And there were some sounds that came out of two separate parts of the forest, and it was definitely a reaction to the sound. And that was, I did not have my thermal imaging at the time. All I had at that time was night vision goggles. And you can only see so far with that, and it's got that hue of green to it. The thermal imaging will actually give you a heat trace and let you know if there's something blood-related in the area, so that puts out a heavy trace. Was not comfortable with some of the sounds that we were hearing. It was almost like a very bold movement on two sides of this valley that we were down in the bottom of.
It's a beautiful thing being out in the wilderness. I've spent a fair amount of time myself out in the wilderness camping and going deep into the woods in places that people have never been in years, and the isolation is something that I enjoy. But then there are times I've done that, not a lot lately, but when I was in my 20s, I went off in the woods a few times. I almost got lost in the woods once up in northern Canada. And you're out there and you hear these sounds, and it can be terrifying, right? Especially if you're just worrying about bears, right? Bears are a factor. I know there's not a lot of examples of bear attacks, but bears do attack, and bears do kill people. It's happened enough to be worried about it, especially when you're out of your element all alone, sleeping in a tent by yourself.
Right. You look like a soft taco in a sleeping bag.
Yeah. I mean, but do you just love being out there? Is that part of the thrill of looking for this thing? Not just the desire to find this creature, but also just the act of going out and living in the woods. Is that something that you love?
I absolutely love it. I like like you said, places where nobody has tread before, or undiscovered areas. I love being that explorer and getting out there. And the alone time for me is really soothing. It's definitely a healing thing for me. The more I stay out in the woods, the happier I become. These cell phones and the electronics and the traffic and the news. Oh, I don't even like watching the news. But it's getting out there and getting back to our roots and being in the forest that's definitely the most peaceful place for me. I love it. I the more scary the sounds, the better for me.
Yeah, I told you before I'd like to go out there looking for Bigfoot with you sometime. Maybe we could go up to British Columbia, Canada, meet up with my friend, and we could go out there to that migratory route and talk about that with him and some of the locals that know the local legends up there.
Absolutely, and I've got a truck full of stuff definitely prepared for that kind of activity. So, Tom, anytime, seriously.
Yeah, it's not that far from you, but it's just up outside of Whistler, British Columbia, right? That's probably just a few hours drive from where you are in Washington State, right?
less than 5 hours. It would be easy.
Yeah. Well, that is amazing. Well, listen, look, we could talk about this for a long time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I haven't asked you, because there's so much I want to talk to you about. But I do know you're also on your way out of off to parts where I don't know where you're off to, but you're going on a little adventure yourself, are you, today? Or
Yeah, I'm going to get out today. I got the weekend ahead of me. I'm just going to get out and eat up some forest time. I'm about due.
Yeah.
Been cramped up in this house for long enough.
I remember you said this in the last show. I want to talk about this on the video show because here we are on YouTube, and I want to make sure I remember to cover everything. But as far as mainstream science goes, you mentioned Jane Goodall, the famous chimpanzee researcher, believes in the possibility of Bigfoot. Are there other scientists or biologists that have made this a legitimate form of study, and have you talked to any of them, or can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, there's two to come to mind right away. One of the co-cast members for Expedition Bigfoot, Dr. Maria Mayer, she's definitely a researcher. She hasn't placed her feet on the ground yet. She's looking for evidence just like the rest of us. But two others that jump out would be Dr. Jeff Meldrum in Idaho, and there was Dr. John Bendernagel from up in Canada. We just lost him a little over a year ago, almost two. Whoa, it's been a while, maybe even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But he really put it all on the line. I mean, Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Dr. John Bendernagel are two people that you admire because regardless of what skeptics say and the overall opinions, they still stand up and they say, look, this is worth researching. This is not a waste of time. There's enough evidence here and enough historical evidence that it's worth pursuing.
What is some of the? I'm now thinking of a few more questions, so I know you got to go soon, but I want to get these
No, I'm
in.
good.
Okay, cool. What kind of concrete evidence is there? Like hair samples? Is there any sort of examples of concrete evidence that we can point to that make you say, whoa, this is different? Has there ever been anything found that is, unexplainable with DNA that we can't identify, anything like this?
There's been, aside from casting the footprints, there actually have been a couple of hair samples that come up as undetermined. So we have a database with hair samples, and it's either going to go as a horse, a dog, a cat, a coyote, whatever different types of hair samples there are, chimpanzee or gorilla. But there's some hair samples that are out there that really don't fall into any of those categories.
Yeah.
And that's what's got my attention. Same with blood samples. There's back east, I'm trying to remember, there's a guy in Florida that actually had, I believe it was a blood sample that didn't match anything in the database. Nothing.
Yeah. And so how does that get explained away by mainstream science when they find some hair sample that they just are not able to tell you what it is?
I'm not sure where they go with that, because if it doesn't fall under what we know as concrete evidence, they can't ignore it either. Mm-hmm. It has to be. It has to fall under some category of undetermined or unexplained or that sort of thing. But if you get enough of those types of things, you have to start logging that information and build a database on the kind of evidence that people are finding in their research.
Is there any part of you that is concerned of what may happen if we do discover Bigfoot? I think about the movie King Kong, of course, where they capture King Kong, this incredible, giant, massive, obviously much bigger than a Bigfoot, gorilla in a remote island. They bring it back to New York City, and ethically and morally, everything gets thrown out the window. It's put on display. It's turned into this, in the movie King Kong that everyone sees unfolds. But are you worried about any negative implications that could happen if we did find it? And then also, what will happen if we find it? What will happen? How will that change the world if we discover this is true? What's going to happen if we find it?
Suppose we came to the table with concrete evidence. It would validate everyone that has been doing research. It would validate all the stories that people have spoken of, and they would have that justification. The part that terrorizes me though is how do we get that evidence without actually providing a physical body, living or dead? And I don't know. It would have to be something along the evidence of undisputable video coverage or something like that. With that in mind, would the government find a way to start protecting and not allowing people to do the research? Because you know as well as I do that when you have something that is the last of its kind or so rare that people with exponential tons of cash on hand are going to want a trophy.
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword.
So you'd be worried that people would go try to hunt this? I mean, they've been very good at eluding capture for the last thousands of years. So it's probably unlikely that you would see it twice. But let's say they did capture one alive. What would they do with it? Would they put it in a zoo, or would they release it back into the woods?
I would hope that they would study it for a very, very, very short period of time. Maybe grab a couple hair samples. And you know how scientists will do. They'll do a blood draw and see if it matches anything else on the database, but not have it long enough to really get the evidence you need in the few days that you have it and cut that thing back loose and turn it back into the wild. If you put it on display for somebody to monetize, at a zoo or that sort of thing, then you've pretty much just killed the species.
Now, are there even laws for something that doesn't exist? I mean, if you, like in theory, right? It does not exist, right? There's no evidence of it existing in mainstream, science. So, are you even allowed to capture it? Something that doesn't exist. And if you did, then what would the government, the Department of the Forests do? I mean, who oversees Sasquatch capture?
That's a good question. If you capture something, the government tends to get involved and want to own everything. From Roswell, you saw what happened in Roswell. If that was everything in Roswell was legitimate, the government has taken everything that has to do with it. So if you capture a Bigfoot, you can bet your bottom dollar the government will come in and remove it from you and seize that evidence or seize whatever you have, especially if it's a live specimen.
So what would they do with it? Who would it be, first of all? What part of the government would be the Department of, what's it called in the United States? The Department of Forests or Parks, or what is it?
Maybe Department of Parks and Recreation. I wouldn't know. But I wouldn't want to.
And they'd come in, and then what would they do? Would they take it to Area 51 and put it with the Roswell stuff, or what?
Sadly, if it was a live specimen, they would probably take it into captivity, and whatever remaining life it had, but it would be in a laboratory being studied and poked and prodded and.
Just what humans do, right? We just ruin everything. What would happen?
You're right.
Yeah. What would happen? What would happen to you if you discovered it? This would be the biggest scientific discovery in biology, or I guess it's biology. Is it biology of all time? Right. What would happen to you? You would be on the cover of Time magazine, I'm assuming, with the Bigfoot, right?
I would imagine. I'd make sure, if it was me, Tom, I would make sure that they put down there that Tom Green's guest, Russell Acord, discovers Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly think that there's got to be a lot of people out there who must be kind of chasing that for that reason, right? Just for the glory of it, of being the first to discover something, right? That's why humans have made so many discoveries, right? It's for the glory of it, right? But would it be the story of the century, or would this be the kind of thing that within a few days we'd be back to business as usual? Like, I remember like a few months ago they discovered a new species of monkey somewhere in Indonesia, and I'm thinking, how did they not discover that before? I mean, everybody's been been searching for a full-size monkey that no one had discovered before. Comes and goes in the news. No one talks about it again. Would it just be back to normal? Oh yeah, now we've got gorillas in America. Big deal. It's over. We're on to the next thing.
I think so. I think we're too short attention span right now. There's just so much going on that I don't think it would last very long in the news.
Man, I want them to discover it, Russell. I want them to. I want you to discover it so I can know that there's giant gorillas in America and in Canada.
I'll do my part.
Can you please discover it for us?
I will give it my best shot, Tom. I'll keep after it.
I mean, you're about to go up to this beautiful place. Let's flip through the last couple pictures. Look at where you're going here. This is just
That's Washington.
That countryside is just so. I mean, I can just almost see a Bigfoot walking across that stream there. And I'm assuming, and here's a great picture of your truck. Is this what you're going to be driving in up to wherever you're going?
Montana?
Yeah.
Actually, that's a 2013. Since I've had that truck, I built the new truck to look exactly like that, but it's a 2019. It's the 1 ton instead of
That looks like a real mean Bigfoot hunting machine right there, I tell you.
It is. It is. What a great beast.
Okay, Russell. Well, listen. Hey, thank you so much for talking about this. I know so many people in my audience are very, very interested in this, and as am I. And I wish you all the luck on your expedition. And I hope you find what you're looking for.
I sure appreciate that. And I think we should head up to Canada and go visit your friend. I think that would be a great trip.
I'm going to call him. I'm not going to say his name on the show, but I'm going to call him right out when I get off with you, and I'm going to talk to him and see maybe if he'd even want to do an interview with me on the show about it. And yeah, absolutely, I would love to do that. It's up near Whistler too, so maybe we could go, catch some runs if we go at the right. Not get the runs, catch some runs on the. go take the snowboard out there or the skis out there. But hey, Russell, Expedition Bigfoot. I really hope to see a new season of that. Let's fingers crossed that you get a new season of that. I can't wait.
Fingers crossed.
All right, Russell. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And
thanks, Tom.
We'll talk again.